Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Hidden from 1987. For this film, we have me go on and, I went through this search engine and I was kind of looking through to find a certain, interesting enough movie. And I stumbled upon this list and I kept scrolling and scrolling, and all of a sudden I ended up finding The Hidden. I was like, okay, this sounds like an interesting title. And then I went on and read the description. I'm like, this sounds like a really interesting concept of a movie, but I don't know. So all of a sudden I started watching the trailer, and I'm like, you know what, this actually looks interesting. It looks like a really cool action movie. And so I went on and I just started watching it. I'm like, man, this movie's actually really fun. Really, I didn't think anything beyond that. I was just like, this movie looks like fun, and I'm happy that I got to see this film somehow or another. So, the concept of this movie, we have Detective Tom, who is to, of course, in the very beginning of this film, catch a guy named DeFries, who is to be this walking man of chaos, doing all these bank robberies, stealing these cars, going crazy, listening to loud rock music, and so on and so forth. And so Tom is to go on and nab this guy, and all of a sudden he's like, well, I guess my job's done for the day. Da, 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 da. And all of a sudden we have an FBI agent called Lloyd who is to walk in and just be like, oh, not so quick there, Detective Tom, because Lloyd is to want to go on and physically see DeFries and want to go and see him. And Detective Tom is like, well, this guy is gonna die soon. Why waste your time? But the FBI guy and Detective Tom are to go to this hospital and are to make their way to this guy's room, to come to find out that a guy who was laying next to DeFries was to just kind of get up and just walk away. And they're like, okay, this really? This doesn't make any sense. So now Lloyd has to explain to Detective Tom that DeFries and Jonathan Miller, the other guy who was to get up and walk away here, were in cahoots with one another, that both of them are to go on and do the exact same number of crimes, and now Lloyd has to track this guy down, and Detective Tom is like, what is going on here? Because Detective Tom is to look through to see if Jonathan has any priors, and he has, parking tickets. And Detective Tom's like, seriously? We're going after people that they have nothing whatsoever. They're just this walking bomb that just bizarrely just goes off one day. This makes no sense. So go further on to this movie and finally have to have Lloyd explain to Tom, because the more and more we go about this story and how Tom starts to understand that it seems that every single person that Lloyd has to chase after, it's because it's the same guy. So, or at some points in this movie, it's the same person. Because eventually we get to a point where it eventually becomes a woman, it eventually becomes a dog, it eventually becomes all kinds of people, to eventually baffle or confuse any number of people in to be persuaded by this person to do something. So, with that said, I enjoy this film, and at the end of the day, normally there's a lot of films where it's like, man, I just I didn't feel it today. I wasn't really into wanting to do this kind of film. But this one here wasn't one of those. It was just like, man, this is so fun. And it's something to kind of sink my teeth into, so I can just kind of feel refreshed and energized for what else I'm going to do for the rest of the day. So let's go on and let's double five this bad boy up. Let's just go into spoilers about this movie. Really, this movie had a sequel that looks like so goofy or so odd that I'm like, I don't think that the sequel is going to be all that good. I just don't think that, like, it seems that the sequel wants to go in this more like effects direction or something like that, and I don't know. It just like I'm good with this first one because I think the second one is just going to be not that good. So going on, let's go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into spoilers about this movie. Where can you go on and say that you can see this film before I go into spoilers? So currently this movie is available on YouTube for like $2.99 or Amazon for like $2.99. So if you want to rent this movie, it's really cheap. Uh, you can also go on, and if you are to weirdly have Sling, then Sling it's on there, I guess. But I'll also give you a free option to say that you can see The Hidden, and that, of course, is to go onto a Google search engine and search the words "Letter C Movies" app. Hopefully, you can be able to download an app that you can be able to say you can see this movie for absolutely free, as well as premium access stuff, exclusive shows and movies that you can only say that you can see exclusively on certain apps like Stars or Cinemax or Netflix or whichever. You can also go on to a app through Google search and search the word Fox HD Movies. And you'll, regardless of what I say next, just kind of search for those words because eventually you'll find an app where the logo will say Fox HD Movies, but the title will say something different. It'll say Play 1080p HD Movies, and be able to go out of your way to find this app, download it, and then go out of your way to say that you can see anything that you'd like. You can also go onto a Google Play Store and search the word TV Crush and be able to download this app where it, of course, would have a logo that has this HD Movies with a kind of king crown off the side. Download that and be able to hopefully be able to see The Hidden or be able to see a number of movies for absolutely free. Like, obviously, there are certain like new release stuff that you can probably see there, like No Way Home or something like that. So, with that said, let's go on into the double five to otherwise go into spoiler time because it's about that time yet again. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about the time we get to spoil this movie. So, like I said, so in the very beginning of this film, we have a guy named DeVries who, at the beginning of this film, like we just see this bank that is kind of in this like TV screen. So, Jack DeVries is to go on and shoot up this bank, and then get out of the bank. He is to go into this lavish like Ferrari like car because for some odd reason like we just have like this alien who just loves like Porsches or Ferraris or just like Whamadyne like cars like that for some reason, just to go really fast, I guess. So we had Fries that goes on into this car and it just becomes this huge massive car chase, which of course leads to Jack eventually crashing his car, and he, of course, to immediately get out of it, and he's like, huh. And so all of a sudden, this car ends up exploding, and so it seems that DeVries is to be rushed to the hospital, and it seems like he's soon going to be dead. So we go on, and we, of course, have Detective Tom Beck, who is to like kind of fill out all this paperwork and everything like that. And so all of a sudden we have the FBI agent Lloyd, who is to go on to see Detective Tom to be the whole liaison because technically Detective Tom was working on this case. So all of a sudden we now have Detective Tom who is to hand off his workload to a guy named Brem, And Bram is like, really? Like, come on, man. Like, I want to see my wife. Like, it's been a while since I've been home. And so all the other detectives is like, well, hey, man, like, I saw your wife last night. Like, she was great. Like, I think she's kind of lost some weight. So, because we have like the other detectives just kind of giving them crap because I'm sure they're never at home either. So we have Tom that is talking to Lloyd, and so it seems that Lloyd is to want to have Tom go into his car, which is like this Porsche, and Tom is saying to Lloyd, it's like, well, hey, like, where'd you get this car from? And Lloyd is like, well, I stole it. And he's like, okay. So Lloyd is to try to go on and like say that this DeFries guy was to go on and to his killed his past partner, and then we come to find out later that this same guy was to also kill this guy's wife and kid. And Tom is just like, well, isn't that like a conflict of interest, or like how is it that the FBI is just allowing you to take on this case? Like it seems like this case is like really close to you, and like so. But both of them end up making it to the hospital, and so we have DeFries, who was supposed to be some goner. He was going to be toast, dead soon. So DeFries all of a sudden is to see a man laying next to him in some bed. And so DeFries goes on and is to transfer via his mouth this alien to be put into this other guy's mouth to then have this guy flatlining. We all of a sudden have this doctor and this nurse scrambling into this room trying to defib Jonathan Miller. And all of a sudden, when like the alien is to all of a sudden go on and just wake up, we had this defibrillation where this doctor like jumps out from the other side of the room and he's like, oh my god, like what the heck happened there? And the guy just wakes up and he's just like, oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna get out of here. So all of a sudden we have this guy Jonathan Miller who is to go into this like record store, and he's just like taking all these like cassettes or like 8-track tapes, and he's just kind of putting them in his blazer. And the guy who works at the store is like, hey man, like, no, like you're stealing those. And the guy just keeps putting them in his pocket, but hey man, I don't think you're listening to me. And so we have Jonathan who kind of pushes this guy, and so all of a sudden he goes behind this counter and is to grab this like thing to like smack this guy. But when he goes on and he tries to do it, eventually, like the tables end up getting turned, and then Jonathan takes this thing away from this guy and is to like bat him to death, and I guess to probably put him in a coma or knock him out or something. So Jonathan all of a sudden leaves, and we see some woman coming to this place. She's like, "Oh my god! Like this guy ended up getting beaten to death." So Jonathan is to make his way to some like Ferrari dealership, but I'll get to that in a second. So Lloyd and Tom are to make it to this hospital, and we have, of course, where Lloyd and Tom make it into this room, and Lloyd is to immediately realize that like this thing had made its escape, and Lloyd is to now ask like, hey, what happened to this room? And the doctor and the nurse are to explain that like, well, yeah, like it seemed weird that this guy has this like certain kind of condition, and all of a sudden like he's up and at him and he's just kind of walking off. And Lloyd is like, well, that's because like he's the next guy I'm looking for. And so luckily there's a picture of this guy, because like supposedly there was a sketch of this guy, but it's like, oh no, like we have a picture of him, like we'll just use that. So they don't put like an APB out for this guy. They don't like like it's nowhere on the TV or anything like that. So Tom is to ask Lloyd, it's like, well, hey, like, why are we chasing after this guy now? Like, this guy probably doesn't even have a record either. And they go on and they find out that he just has parking tickets. And Lloyd is like, well, because they're in cahoots together. Both of these guys somehow were in the same room together and they were both in cahoots. And, and Tom is like, yeah, sure. Whatever you say, FBI agent. Like, I guess you're just filling the bill for all the stuff that I have to go on and do here. So we have Detective Tom that, and I can't believe that this is like all one stretch of probably like one long day, because like, well, like that's not true because we do have technically like a sleeping moment, where kind of Lloyd gets up. So like this is probably in a span of like 2 days. This whole thing, so both Tom and Lloyd are to now track down this guy. And so come to find out he is to be at this Ferrari dealership, and all of a sudden we have this salesman and this one guy who's like, yeah, like I'm really fascinated in this Ferrari. Like what should I do? Should I sell my Mercedes or should I go on and like I don't know, like should I just go on and just So all of a sudden we have Jonathan, who just comes on in and he's just like, I want this car. And the guys are like, well, like, wait your turn, buddy. Like, I can show you another car that's just like this. And he's like, no, I want this car. And so the salesman is just like, well, like, this car is this guy's. So, no. And so, because the guy is like, well, yeah, I'm going to buy this car. Like, hey, don't scuff up my car. Like, we have, like, Jonathan that ends up getting in the car. And he's like, where are the keys? So we have the salesman that goes on to like go and get his security, which is to be a guy named Eddie, who is Don Davis, and so I think this guy was on God, what was that? The one movie where it was the Minnesota Twins movie, and the kid was to be the owner of the Minnesota Twins. Like I want to say it's like Little Big League or something like that, but I don't remember movies all that well. But if you probably go on and you probably see like a Minnesota Twins movie, where it's the Minnesota Twins, like there's only one kind of movie like that exists. Um, so yeah, like that'll be the movie that I think this guy was in at some point, from what I remember. Anyways, pushing on. So Jonathan is to see that this guy has arrived and is stopping him from like taking this car. He's like grabbing him, he's kind of pushing him out of his car, he's kind of pushing him out of this lot, and this guy continues to keep coming back. To where Eddie is to consistently keep pushing this guy, and he just keeps coming back. So it gets to the point where we finally have Jonathan, who is to just kind of really mess up this guy and is to pull him into this office to want these keys. And he goes on and is like, we have this salesman and we have this person buying this car who are doing coke, lines of coke before they make a sale on this car. I'm like, okay, like, what is just everybody just doing coke because it's the 80s? Like, I don't think you should like really seal the deal with a thing of coke and give somebody like a car. That just seems weird to me. That just seems like an accident waiting to happen. And then how are they going to pay for this car? Never thought about that, right? So Jonathan gets the keys from these men, and is to also take this gun and is to go on. And we have Jonathan, who is to also steal this this boombox, this kind of just like this like portable stereo system, um, that of course were to be called boom boxes. Go ahead and Google search it for those of you that may not know what that is, because we have like iPods and or and stuff like that now. Or like, is iPod still a thing? Like maybe it's something else now. Maybe it's Zooms. For those of you who are to see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So we go further into this film, and so Jonathan is going on to this like this diner, and he's eating all this food. He's starting to get sick, and so we go on, and after Jonathan is to kill these men and is to take these keys, he goes on and of course is to like have this guy's wallet, and it's a spot that he works at some imports business, uh, and so we go and we have, of course, Jonathan, who goes into this place to find out that this guy is to buy and sell all these guns. And so we have a moment where this guy, it seems, um, that thing, the thing that's in his body is trying to break away to have it rip through a part of Jonathan's arm and show this like tentacle that's kind of just dangling like this and kind of flinging around. And so Jonathan has to kind of tape his arm up, and it seems like he needs like a second to just kind of like really just kind of deal with like this body. He needs like a reset moment. So because we have both Lloyd and we have Tom, who of course are to both just kind of go to dinner. And Tom is to have a wife and kids, or wife and kid, which is a daughter. So they go to Tom's place, they have dinner, and it seems that Lloyd is to start drinking. And while Lloyd is drinking and talking to these people, it seems that he's kind of like very unbalanced as he was was before. So we have Tom's wife, who's starting to ask this gentleman questions. I think her name is Barbara. Or maybe that might be the daughter. Let's go with Barbara. So we have Barbara that asks Lloyd, it's like, well, hey, like where are you like originally? And he's like, well, Seattle. And then like Barbara goes on, it's like, well, like did you ever live anywhere before that? And Lloyd is just like, well, and she's like, where is that? Is that up north? And he's like, yeah, like I live up north. And she's like, well, like what city was that? And Lloyd is to mention like some name that doesn't sound like a legitimate city. And so like, okay, this sounds weird. I've never heard of this city before. Because Lloyd, of course, is to actually be an alien also. It seems that his being an alien is a little bit different than the other alien that we, of course, are to see as his nemesis in the movie. And whenever Lloyd, I guess, is due a transfer, like his transfer kind of comes through like as this kind of weird, like orange and yellow looking, like kind of light show of sorts through someone's mouth, and like as if like this is Life Force, like the movie Life Force. So because eventually that'll happen at some point in this movie. So Lloyd, of course, is to go on, and we have him getting like really drunk, and like he's not really talking that well. So they let Lloyd just kind of sleep it off at their place. So Lloyd is to wake up the next day, and Detective Tom is to get him some like Alka-Seltzer, and is like, man, like alcohol does not agree with you. This still might go on and almost be like the same like night still. Like they might have gotten a couple hours of shut eye and then right back to it. Because come to find out, Jonathan is to go to this strip joint. And Jonathan is to go to this joint, and it seems that they were to go on and track down this car. And so Jonathan goes into this club and is like kind of like, yeah, like enjoying the dancing. As we of course have a girl named Brenda who is going onto the stage, and she's dancing and kind of revealing top. And so at some point, we of course have Jonathan who is looking on at the show. And so after Brenda is kind of done with her dance, Jonathan is to go to this girl's dressing room, and Brenda's like, oh, like, I know what this is. And so Brenda is to go on and want to just kind of shoo this guy away. I think the establishment that Jonathan goes to is called the Harem, like the Harem Club or something like that. Um, but heaven forbid I'm actually right about anything. So we have Jonathan that is to just meet up with this girl just to body swap some alien. And so now Brenda is to go on and be this alien, and she walks out of this place. And so now we have some girl who is to find this body and is to kind of call the cops and let people know. So Lloyd and Tom are to make it to this club, and we have, of course, like Tom asking this girl who witnessed this body, like starts asking her questions, and eventually is to kind of get nowhere. But it seems that Lloyd is to find this picture of this girl, and so he's like, well, this might be like the next thing that this thing had jumped into. And Tom still, like, I don't think he's really getting it, but he's just kind of following the bouncing ball, which is really just Lloyd here. So Lloyd is thinking that, like, okay, like there has to be like a transference here, and like who is to be this next person. So Lloyd and Tom are just going on and they're kind of checking, and come to find out, we had Brenda who is to meet up with this guy, who is to have this kind of like, hey, I have this flashy car. How about you come with me, and you can kind of see my ride. So all of a sudden, seeing this ride is to have Brenda and this man kind of bouncing up and down in this guy's car. And I don't think that they're bouncing up and down because the car is so fun. All of a sudden, within the sounds of what's going on, we have Brenda who is to seemingly be enjoying herself, so much so that she does not want to go on and have this activity that they're both doing in this car to end. Even though we have the other guy who's just like, okay, like I've had enough, come on, kind of give me a minute. And so Brenda just keeps going on and bouncing up and down till she basically breaks this man and kills him. So she seduces him to death, and then chucks the body out of the car and is to go on and to start just touching upon herself, because of course she Brenda is to just kind of be unfamiliar with this kind of body, because I guess normally she would just go on and go from man to man to man, and so I guess now that she is to be woman, I guess like the body is to just seemingly be different. To the point where it seems that Brenda is to continue on through this movie, continuing to just touch herself repetitiously to the point where when they go on and they find Brenda and two cops are kind of pulling her over, like, "Excuse me, miss." And Brenda is to go on and just kind of like touch wherever her dress is to be, and the cops just like, "Man, this is gonna be a weird night." So, but Brenda is to have this arsenal of weaponry with her, and so she is to place this arsenal of weaponry within this car. So both Tom and Lloyd are kind of slowly but surely behind here, finding a man who had done it to death, and so we have this ambulance driver that's gonna have to like pull up this guy's underwear and this guy's pants and just be like, man, like there's gonna be a lot of like bodies going into body bags and this ambulance. Like I don't think I've prepared for them all. So we go on, and I guess they immediately are to kind of look up this car and are to try to track down this car. So we go on in one of the police cars are to find this car, and we have the Brenda was to go on and shoot up these police officers and scramble. So immediately they're following this car, and we have Lloyd and we have Tom who's kind of chasing after this car as well. So this leads them to this kind of like abandoned factory, it seems, because when they go into here, there's just a bunch of mannequins, and there's just kind of like this like kind of interesting setup of these kind of like random items, so that are mostly mannequin items. So we have Lloyd and we have Tom, and they're trying desperately as possible to just shoot up this woman, and man is she just like splattered with all these kinds of bullets. And like Tom and probably his head is like, God, this woman can't be stopped. Like how many times do we have to shoot this woman? So they go on and they continue to try to shoot this woman, and so they meet up at this rooftop. And so Lloyd and Brenda are having the showdown because Brenda had trying to fight with Tom, and Tom almost fell off to the side of this rooftop. And so Lloyd is trying to pull Tom back, and like Tom is just now like just watching on as this tango between Lloyd and Brenda is going down. So Brenda is to go on and say it's like, well, hey, like you're never gonna get to me, like I'll never go, like you'll never kill me, blah blah blah. So Lloyd is all of a sudden whip out this weird looking alien gun that like it looks like somebody just made like a metal piece out of just wood shop, and they're like, yeah, this could look like a gun, right? Like it's just some like metal piece that they just like crafted together, and I'm like, man, like that's like an interesting gun, but like if this was done like in modern day, a gun like this that would look nothing like that. More than likely, it would be some like really goofy, interesting weaponry that looked so high tech and so interesting and so weird. And so, but this just looks like this like just metal piece that was kind of like mended and mangled into like looking like a gun somehow or another. But it just looks like this just metal piece. It's weird. So we go on, and we now have Tom, who is very suspicious with Lloyd, because it seems that both of these people are to have a history together. And again, Tom still doesn't understand how is it that like Brenda was to go on and do any of this because she has no real history. And so like every single time it just comes down to that, where like it feels that Tom hasn't been getting answers to Lloyd, and it seems like like he's been getting lied to, and he's just tired of it. So Brenda is to fall from this rooftop, and Brenda is to go on, and the first thing that ends up kind of running her way is this dog. And so Brenda is to change into this dog, and then the dog runs away. Lloyd is to run after her as all these like police and detectives are now all there, and Lloyd is like, "Oh my god, like where did she get to? Like where is this person now? Who is this person now? Because somebody had to get to this person." So Lloyd and Tom are just kind of like just taking a break because like they don't know where this is. We also had Jonathan from before watching while he was in this diner. He was watching a televised event about the senator going on and talking about this meeting that they're going to have. And so, of course, we have this alien that is now this dog. This dog wants to go on and figure out how he can go on and get access to this senator to be able to become this senator, like to become a guy of power. And once you become a guy of power, you end up getting protected because no one is to know like the difference. So, which is really smart. Like it's a really like that's like a really like you might as well like try to become like the president of the United States, so you can go on and like be the most like protected man in the world, because people of course don't understand the whole like, oh, he's an alien thing. Like no, they'll just be like, what? Like no, like this guy sounds like a loon. Like no. So we have this dog who I guess was to be the owner of one of these lieutenants, because I guess one of these lieutenants was, of course, to be a guy that was on the scene and had to forcibly have his dog, because like this scene has been going on for I don't know how long. This whole like this chase thing going on here. So when Lloyd and Tom make it back to the station, we have Lloyd that is to get arrested, because Tom is like, you know what, I've had enough. Like this guy is lying to me. So I'm going to go on and tell one of my detectives, just go on and arrest him. Just go on. Just go on and arrest him. So they take all of Lloyd's items, and so Tom is to kind of see these items. And so they go on and arrest him. And so I think that's when like we might get some characters that actually are to probably have some sleep at this point and call it a day. So we have this lieutenant that ends up coming into the office and is talking to his people, and we immediately have it where like this lieutenant is talking to some people that are working with the senator. And so like the lieutenant is like, well, hey, where's this speech again that's going to be given? And they're like, oh, it's right around here. And he's like, oh, okay, like yeah, like I'll definitely be on that personally. So we have the lieutenant that is to want to get into this precinct because he now knows that Lloyd exists. That like now like this lieutenant is realizing that like he has to take down Lloyd. It's basically like Terminator realizing that Kyle Reese exists, and so it's like, well, I want to take down Kyle Reese. It's the same kind of thing here. So now, because there's a reason why I kind of mentioned the Terminator thing, because the way this is kind of set up, very similar, seems like Terminator. So we go on and we just have this lieutenant that's just kind of randomly grabbing all these weapons, this grenade, these heavy artillery weapons, and nobody like says a word about it. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess the lieutenant's just weirdly grabbing all these weapons from anywhere. Like, like, okay, like, this sounds cool. So, I guess to a lot of people, like, yeah, this guy is gunning up for some goofy reason. So, we go on, and so Tom is to make it in the office, and all of a sudden he's talking to his lieutenant, and like the lieutenant is to go on and ask Tom, like, hey, where is the FBI agent? And Tom was like, well, like, he's in the jail, like, you should know that, like. And the lieutenant's just like, well, like show me to him. And Tom is like, okay, this is kind of weird. But then lieutenant is to kind of hold a gun to Tom and say, like, hey, like, because Tom was to get shot, but not like so much shot that he would, like, it was just a scratch. It was like a flesh wound. And so he ends up calling his wife and just telling him, like, hey, yeah, I ended up getting shot, but it's okay. It's just a flesh wound. So Tom then is to realize that, like, this guy is to mention that he had shot him before and he'll do it again. And so Tom's like, oh my God, it's the same guy. It's the same dude. So Tom is to go on and we had a moment where there is to be this like evidence guy who's like fiddling with this alien weapon, and he touches it, and all of a sudden the alien weapon ends up going off, and everybody's like, oh my God, what was that? And so they rush off to see what that was. They kind of pick up this evidence guy who kind of got like freaking the wind knocked out of him. And so like that kind of like is a distraction enough to at some point have Tom running off to try and desperately free Lloyd and to get this weapon so that way Lloyd can like help Tom. Because this lieutenant has some severe arsenal here. So the guys are going on and Tom is telling like these guys, is like, hey, it's Lieutenant, go after him. Like he's gonna try to kill us. So Lieutenant is starting to pop off certain detectives, and so we further go on and have this lieutenant that's trying to get into jail cells, where of course Tom is also at. And we have Tom that's to free Lloyd and just like, well, hey, like, I'm trusting you here. And so Tom is to give Lloyd over his gun. It's like, well, hey, like go on and use this thing against it. And Lloyd is like, it doesn't work on human flesh. Like, that's the reason why I had to wait to the perfect time for this alien to eventually get released out of this body and then take him out that way. So what happens is that this lieutenant is to go on and try to take down Tom and Lloyd here, but like it just doesn't happen. And so what ends up happening instead is the lieutenant goes on and is to change from the lieutenant to now Cliff Willis. And so Cliff Willis is to make his way to this senator's place and is to go on and shoot up all these people to easily make his way to the senator. And so the senator is like protecting this woman who of course is Carol Millers. And so we easily have Willis, who is to just kind of make it through all of these guys and is to transfer over to the senator. And then when Lloyd and Tom rush their way to figure out where Willis is and are chasing after him, we have, of course, the senator who's kind of being hauled out by all these bodyguards, and the senator is looking at Lloyd and he's like, like, yeah, like, guess what? And then Lloyd is like, oh, crap. So now Lloyd, at this point, we had one detective, I think his name is Sanchez, who is to bring in this one flamethrower weapon that someone was to have on the streets. And we're like, okay, what was the point of this? But it was really just to have this like lavish weapon for a later part of this movie. Because Lloyd is to go on and make it to this meeting with the senator, and he of course is to go on and is to have to burst through these security guards, run into this meeting, and I'm like, I can't believe that this guy would be easily like not taken down here. But in my brain I'm like, but this guy is like also a Terminator too. Like Lloyd is a Terminator also, where he should be getting like riddled with bullets and like nothing's really going to happen. So Lloyd is going on after this senator, and he uses this like flamethrower device and goes on and has the senator who falls over, and the alien is to scramble out of this guy's mouth. And so Lloyd goes on and is to finally use this alien weapon to shoot this alien and is to blow it up and kill it. So it's like, oh, thank God. Like, finally, the relief. In my brain, I'm like, why would they just send one guy? Why would they send one alien? If ever I've seen an alien invasion, there's normally a group of people. Like, I would never assess or assume that it would only be like one dude. Hence, like, I don't know. Like, I just would not. Like, if we've ever seen an invasion movie, it's normally like a cluster of people like body swapping into people, or like we had this invasion. But like, I get it if we had a number of these things like running amok. Like, yeah, like that would probably lead to like a really fun action movie. But really going on, like, it feels like one of these guys would be tough enough. Because, of course, Terminator similar. So, yeah. So, we have, of course, now Tom and Lloyd at the end of all this are in the hospital. And Tom had gotten shot a couple times in the chest. That's why you kind of don't see him in the end. And so Lloyd, who is to realize that Tom may soon be a goner, that he might die soon from his injuries, Lloyd has decided to go inside Tom and go on and become Tom. Because more than likely, they're probably thinking with like a sequel, it's like, yeah, maybe this guy probably wouldn't be back for a sequel, but maybe Tom would. Maybe if they were going to go on and do another one of these. And plus, also, like, Tom was just kind of like the guy that they horseshoed in for this movie. So we have Lloyd who transfers into Tom. And so in the sequel, we actually do have Tom in there for whatever he's there for, to be like the veteran guy. But yeah, so, and all of a sudden Tom comes back to life. His family's like, oh my God, like, you're back. Oh my God, this is crazy. And you would probably think that eventually, like, his family would probably find the difference out. They would probably figure out, it's like, oh, well, this isn't our Tom. There's something about him that's very suspicious. Maybe after that whole hospital day, he's never been the same. And so then, like, maybe the family like got a divorce and whatever, and he just kind of left his family, because that might be like a way to write a story in a sequel. But yeah, like, with that said, I think everything technically got covered for the most point. Kind of rushed some certain things, or really didn't remember certain parts exactly. Like, we had that one lieutenant part where he goes and shoots off this like bazooka, and is to like create this big massive hole in this exit, and that leads to I think the lieutenant getting out and switching with Lewis, and like all that rigmarole just ends up happening. So yeah. With that said, let me know if you went to go on and watch this movie called The Hidden, just to check it out because it's a cheap rental movie. Or you could say that you can go into a number of apps that I've recommended or suggested and watch this film. Yeah, other than that, I think I'm just going to get out of here so I can go out of my way to do other things because who knows how this is going to even be a blip on the radar because I just like regardless, like there's certain times where I just want to watch a movie because it's fun. Um, and whether that comes off to be like me being the best reviewer or the worst, at the end of the day, I can watch a movie because I want to have fun, not because it's like, oh well, like this will be like the most challenging thing that I can possibly do. Like this has to probably be the most popular movie ever, I guess. But it may not be YouTube popular, but whatever. It's sometimes you just gotta go on and do a movie um, for the purest reason, and the purest reason is because I enjoy, I like, I whatever. So goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.